Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is on a 3-day official visit to France aimed at strengthening bilateral relations and advancing cooperation in education, diplomacy and trade. The visit includes high-level engagements with UNESCO, French President Emmanuel Macron, and senior French government officials. Pretoria says South Africa and France enjoy a comprehensive and productive relationship underpinned by strong cooperation at bilateral, regional and multilateral levels across a wide range of sectors. The visit comes despite recent reports that South Africa was excluded from the G7 summit in France following alleged pressure from the United States on the French government. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by international relations analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden. Dr. van Heerden, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon and good afternoon to your listeners.
Now, Dr. van Heerden, how would you describe the current state of diplomatic relations between South Africa and France?
I would say that it is actually good. I think the French representatives, as well as Dirco, are truthful when they say that relations are very good between the two countries. But as you've alluded, in recent months there was a little tension point. As you know, South Africa is facing punitive actions against them by the United States of America. And even though President Macron, when he attended the G20 in Johannesburg, personally invited President Ramaphosa to the G7, knowing that he was going to be the host of the summit, unfortunately, America had other plans. And yes, the French are denying it now because they obviously don't want to give the impression that they succumb to pressure from the United States or from Washington, D.C. But it's quite clear that it was the Marco Rubio and Donald Trump administration that put pressure on Macron to disinvite Ramaphosa to the G7. Otherwise, they were not going to come. And as a result, they had to then say, unfortunately, they are not going to extend the invitation. And in the place of South Africa, invited Kenya to represent Africa. But besides that little faux pas or diplomatic uncomfortableness, I think relations between France and South Africa is actually very good. And the 3-day visit, official visit, is in a way an apology, I think, on the part of President Macron. So I suspect what we are going to see is the red carpet and all the bells and whistles that's going to be laid out for Ramaphosa.
How important is France as a political and economic partner for South Africa within the European Union?
Well, it's the third largest trading partner within the European Union. Germany is number 1, the UK is number 2, and France is number 3. And so it's a very, very strategic and important trading partner for South Africa. It's mostly, among other things, but mostly in the pharmaceutical sector. And a few strategic minerals and so forth. From our side, we import those. From the French side, obviously, it's strategic minerals. From our side, manganese, iron ore, quite a few of our raw materials, and of course also the automotive sector. But there's still space for a lot of other things. For example, I'm sure that President Ramaphosa is also going to talk to Macron around commitments that were made from various European Union countries with regards to the just energy transition, moving away from fossil fuels and so forth, because for us as South Africans, that is a new booming industry, green shoots that can create jobs and bring in new money into the economy.
And how can both countries expand, trade and investment opportunities just amid a global economic uncertainty? I mean, with the U.S. President Donald Trump and the crisis in the Middle East starting up again, literally after a few weeks of a fragile ceasefire.
Yeah, I think those are some of the geostrategic and geopolitical issues that's going to be featuring on the agenda. As you know, South Africa is but a small player in the bigger scheme of the global situation, but nonetheless a player. And I think that Macron and Ramaphosa is going to also have to reflect on what came out from the G7, what are the kind of commitments, and how does that tally with the objectives that Ramaphosa had set for the G20 agenda. And I think and when you have that conversation, you cannot ignore three of the hotspots in the globe: Ukraine, Russia, Iran, America, and Israel, and of course, Israel and what the genocide that's taking place in Gaza.
Both countries have expressed concern over instability in parts of Africa. How can South Africa and France work together to promote peace and security on the continent?
This is going to be an interesting conversation, and it's one that is going to be had. As you know, even though South Africa is always touted as a small player in global affairs, but on the continent, it has played quite an important role in terms of peacekeeping as well as peace building. Our involvement in the eastern side of the DRC, our involvement in Mozambique with Cabo Gardaaf, and other areas, the talks that we held between Eritrea and Ethiopia, and of course the role that President Mbeki had played in South Sudan and the Sudanese. So we've played a role. Macron is aware of it. There's problems in the Sahel as well as Southern Africa. I think these are all going to make for very interesting conversations between the South Africans and French.
Just looking at what's happening with the French, with France and the relations on the African continent, when you look at countries like Mali and sort of pulling away from their strong France's engagements or France's relationships with them. What needs to happen on that front, especially if President Ramaphosa does have influence and big influence when it comes to the African continent?
Yeah, I think the French has realized that their time of exploiting their former colonies are over. I think they've accepted that, and they've come up with a new reality, which is to begin to engage with other regions and other parts of the continent. And I think that this is why, the French had the recent economic conference in Kenya, to which South Africa was invited, but Ramaphosa insisted that he wants to rather have a bilateral and not be part of an African group. And that's what then precipitated the 3-day state visit. But the point is that the French has clearly come up with a strategic decision that now that they are no longer in the former Francophone colonies, they need to strengthen relations with other countries on the continent. And South Africa is a key player as the largest economy on the continent, of course.
Dr. Van Heerden, thank you for your time on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, and to you too. That is international relations analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden joining us on the line.
When the story moves, we move. Africa